And with that, let me introduce Barbara to the stage. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, first of all, for coming back from the coffee break. That's always very much appreciated, that the topic itself didn't put you off. And now we're going to do a test on the clicker. Guy introduced me very nicely already, so I don't have a job in that. And I also think about 50% of my presentation was covered by François' previous presentation on actually setting up something like this for a multinational company, especially beverages, though. I see that Carlsberg was not on there. I saw the little Heineken example in the middle, which we're not happy about, but let's change that then with a nice presentation. So maybe, first of all, a little bit of context. I was actually innovation manager for the Swiss company before I got my current position. That meant I was responsible for 3 different innovations in different beverage categories, actually. All 3, very nice for me, actually made it into the market, and you might have seen them, but I'm not going to tell you what they are, because 2 of those innovations are already exiting the market. Unfortunately, they were not as successful, though I am careful with the word success, as the brand that I'm about to talk to you about today, because fundamentally the 2 brands are actually line extensions, and sub-brands all had great recipes and, in my opinion, a right to win, and they also had their consumer audience. It wasn't that we had it completely wrong, but there were a number of aspects, such as obviously company prioritization, the company real focus, and the sales force and everybody fully being behind it, as well as some financial resources which help when it comes to a new brand launch. And then the other part of the thing was the go-to-market strategy and the way you build your plans, which I strongly believe in, because we really, I think I overthought and dreamt about how we get this market or this brand into the market. Why did I do that? Well, when the financial investments are high and the company's looking at you, you start to want to mitigate all the risks that you possibly can in order to make that brand launch a success. In the beverage industry, we actually have a lot of different stages. It's not just that we need to make people aware of our brands, we need to actually get them to consider it. Then we need them to try it. Then we need them to actually make maybe their first purchase, because very often we do a lot of sampling to help encourage you to experience our product. And then what it really depends on is your repeat purchase afterwards, because we work on a share of throat. So you have a lot of choices in the beverage category, and any day from the next, you're very fickle consumers, you're not very loyal. You like to have a glass of wine one day, a beer the next, and then maybe a cocktail the other day. So we work hard to make sure that we get those repeat purchases, which is why I'm very careful with the word success. We're 13 months in market. So far we're doing fantastically, and the sign of that naturally is when a retailer hasn't delisted you from the supermarket shelves. So, and also another sign of that is when you have very happy, shiny people like these friends. I'm going to call them friends on the left-hand side. I don't know them. I also don't know who I've called Sandra, and I promise you we haven't stalked anyone, but my people in my creative agencies get very excited when the brand that they just worked 6 months on is launched and they see their first consumers. So our friends here and Sandra here all managed to somehow buy my brand, which is fantastic. But what has actually stood between my brand and all of these guys? Well, I will talk about the pre-launch phase when we're trying to think about what could stand between my brand and these guys, but I will demonstrate just via the very last moment of decision and how complex that in actual fact already is. So our friends naturally would have purchased those bottles on a night out in the picture on the top left, a nice bar, and Sandra will have selected it somehow miraculously from a shelf like this in a supermarket. So when you're doing a brand launch, and when it's actually a full new brand launch, it's not a line extension, you don't have a reference point, and in fact in Switzerland you don't actually have a category anchor because ciders as such don't exist. How does your consumer even get to picking you or selecting you from either the bar or the shelf? Well, in the case of the friends in the bar, either someone was ingenious enough to have seen my advertising, then decided, top of mind, that that's a fantastic product that they really want to try. They've gone to their local bar. They think, I really feel like a Somersby today. Then they have identified that behind the bar, somewhere behind the left foot of the bartender, there is a fridge with bottles inside it. And there is something that is yellow and green I've never seen before, looks really interesting. Please, can I try it, bartender? Okay, chances during each part of that sentence I've just said to you keep going down and down that they will actually select you as a brand. Now, Sandra doesn't have any more of an easy job, to be honest, because unless I probably, in those first few months of launch, put a display in the aisle in front of her trolley that I accidentally bumped into and thought, oh, okay, there's something green and yellow here I haven't seen before. Probably she didn't manage to select me from that middle shelf amongst all the other things that she might already know. So, our job is difficult, and there is an entire world of things that are stood between us, even at the last moment of purchase, not to mention everything else that's going on in a consumer's life. As a brand, I say I, my little bottle of Somersby, is totally and utterly insignificant in a consumer's life. So how do I make myself significant? How do I reduce my risks, mitigate, make sure that I lower all the barriers to actually that purchase for the consumer? Well, unless I have a guy like this who can show me the future, looks into his stairs beautifully, or is entranced about his ball and knows what's going to happen. If anyone knows someone like that, please let me know. It is our success that we want to establish, right? We want to look to the future. We want to understand if our new brands and our new launches are going to have that resonance with our consumers, and it's going to be successful before it's even launched. But because we don't have that, and because we have this risk mitigation we want to go for on our brands, yes, we would like somehow to get direct access to our consumers prior to launch. And these guys are our potential hypothetical consumers, because although in our minds as marketeers we have our target group, in reality it could be a lot broader as a prime target. And we want to get around that. We want to ask all of our concerns and questions before we go to launch, let's say 6 months before launch. It's already quite late, but that's when we went in. And we went through different phases because we had a lot of questions, okay? Somersby is an international brand. It really, in Switzerland, you have a very fragmented market. You have 3 different regions, 3 different languages. What the Germans like, the French guaranteed probably won't like. I hope you allow me to make those generalizations if you're Swiss in the room. But there is a little bit of tension there. So when you want to come in as an international brand, international launch, one size fits all, it's pretty difficult unless you have some really good routing that you put into that market in your execution phase. So we have these questions. Our brand also has a bit of a quirky character and really not for everyone, so we wanted to make sure that that sense of humor and the underlying tone of voice fits, not to mention then the actual activations the consumer will experience. So, oh dear. For our purposes, we looked at crowdsourcing really as something that, this is my definition, and from my lens, this is really enlisting the help of a larger group of people. We had about 500 people who were essentially volunteers, so non-paid. They had some incentives to take part, because naturally, it's not like with the example in the NHS, you have an incentive to make your own workplace even better and your own processes. Here, these are consumers contributing to the future of a brand that they may or may not actually have anything to do with. So, but they are independent, they're impartial. If they don't like something and they're going to tell you they don't like it, and that's exactly what we wanted to hear. And we wanted to get some insights from them. We get validations, and hopefully, as I said at the end of it, to mitigate those chances of failure that Sandra and those friends will not like us and not find us anywhere in the market. So for us, harnessing that power of the crowd meant multiple different things. And some of this has been covered by someone else, so I'm not going to go to that. I'm actually going to show you how we did it. We had a 4-month process where the first phase, someone here mentioned legal aspects. We did it unbranded because it was December and our launch was April. So we did it unbranded with a crowd online, and through gamification, a set of questions that really gave us insights into the thinking of consumers and how they interacted with certain ideas and concepts. For example, open-mindedness. How do Swiss consumers feel about this term, and how do they feel about it was a very backwards way of asking about the quirkiness of our brand and how open they would be to it, as an example. Then, once we finished that, and we had some really fantastic insights that helped us already, and I will show you 3 of those, I will reveal 3 of those insights, we invited the crowd back to a second phase where we revealed the brand to them, and we let them have everything really that we could provide at that time when it came to TV advertising, outdoor material, all of our concepts, ideas, how we wanted to activate the brand, and we let them test it, let them play with it, and see what they had to say. Some of the things we then cancelled because we knew it wasn't going to work as a result of this, and some things we amplified. Now, an interesting third stage to this, and this was very created structure for a crowd, because this is all online, but then we actually took it offline. So we invited those we turned them into word-of-mouth ambassadors, let's say. We invited that crowd out. We invited them to also talk to their peers, invite people in, and try our product. We're going to give you quite a bit of product so that you can enjoy with your friends, and all you have to do is then go out there and taste, share it in social media, share that experience. We let you go loose. We have absolutely no influence whatsoever on what you're going to do, which we were fully aware that could have led to either chaos, total chaos, a lot of negatives, or a lot of buzz. But from the first 2 stages, we already realized that it was going to be more buzz rather than negative. So we were very happy about that. But this took us from a whole heap of insights generation, so a lot of attitudes and behavioral insights that we wouldn't have otherwise known, because we weren't aware of how Swiss consumers from the French or German side would really react with this, and how we could pull together and bring commonalities out. Then the second stage really helped us to validate concepts and our activation plans. And I will again show you some of that in just the next slide. And then the last stage, of course, for anything, we believe that tasting is believing. With our beverages, if you have no category to anchor it in, because as I said, modern cider or ciders don't really exist in Switzerland. We can't call the product a cider. It isn't a cider in Switzerland for legal reasons. And it's completely something brand new for the market. I think the best thing you can do is just give a product and try. So we did that, and we've invested a lot of money in the first year, and we will this year as well, in lowering those barriers to actual trial that then help the purchase hopefully later on. And we got a lot of word of mouth through this, and I will show you one slide on that as well. So 3 of our insights, if anyone's interested, very snapshots, look at it. You can read them. We wanted to understand if we were to do something a bit crazy with the brand, like in other markets, they've done some really crazy stuff, PR stunts, try to get consumers really involved, a lot of tension there in some of those launches, I felt. So we wanted to judge if that was something that was going to work in Switzerland or not. And actually, no. So as you saw in the insight for us, so it's not really so much from what our crowd told us in the national psyche, that you would want to be the first to stand out and shout and wave your arms and say, I'm here, and pay attention to me. So we rather do things in a way that people feel that they're already part of a group, part of a crowd, even when the product is new. So parties, bigger groups, introduction via larger groups of people that can share amongst each other, and then there's a safety in sharing further on, was how we did it. In terms of the second insight, as I mentioned, brands don't really have such a significance, let's say, or but like a new brand cannot have any significance in a consumer's life, even at launch, and for some brands even later on, which means you can't create your own conversations. You have to be part of things already happening in the market. Like, for example, when it comes to activations, don't create new spaces where you want the consumers to come to you, rather we come to the consumers. So if there are bars and events that are happening already, we'd rather go with our little Summersby bus here. That's a bar on wheels, essentially, and we'll visit you around the country and make you kind of have an emotional connection with us, as well as enjoying, hopefully, a bottle of our product. Thirdly, festival season in Switzerland is a fascinating thing. Apparently, everything that is in the first insight doesn't really apply when it comes to festivals. So anything outdoor, anything by a lake, has this mesmerizing effect on people, whether it's in the French part or the German part. And there's this innate love of being outdoors in the sunshine, normally by water. And that was an absolutely conclusive feedback that we had from everywhere, and this is a quote from somebody, about where we should activate the brand, and that's why our Orange, or now, sorry, Salt Cinema cooperation came about last year, and now we're expanding that this year to include Luna Open Air Cinema, so we'll now be at 10 different open air events around the country. So all of this came from the crowd, not from us, and they really told us and taught us to change our preconceived concepts, and even though we were confident, maybe overly confident in some of our plans, at least we did manage to listen to them and adapt some of our plans before we could have got it wrong. Then what you get when you allow them to interact with the brand and you actually let them experience it, and all you say is, here you go. Please just share your experience and please share those images, is you get, more than 1 million reach online, 200,000 offline conversations, 500,000 page blog views, and an immense amount of data that's already out there and in social media that helps to launch your brand before it's even available on the shelves. That was the point for these guys, that all of this happened before it was even available, and then they were our first fans when it came to Facebook page of posting, I found it on shelf, it's finally here. And that's obviously also another pride point for us. Not to mention that when you ask them about feedback, would you kindly just tell us? We asked 1,000 people filled in our questionnaire, and the results in terms of intent to purchase in the future then really are quite, I think they're lying, quite honestly, but it is very, very strong results for us to know. So when it comes to the crowd, this is only my lens. This is pre-launch, and this is about, are your assumptions correct? Do you really know what you think you know? And do you have the foresight to actually go in and say, okay, let's let them tell us first. Let's not get it wrong. Let's let consumers play with our things. It's an international brand, but that doesn't mean that in the local market you can't have an activation plan that isn't tailored to the local needs, and that's exactly what we did. So for me, the possibilities are endless, and they're evolving as technology evolves as well. So I'm not an expert in this at all, so we'll turn to Francois during the lunch. But it's definitely an honest and unbiased check. Consumers will tell you if they don't like something, which is great. And they will then be your first fans and the ones that will be spreading the news before. And my time's up. Very good. So, questions, if there are any. Yes. No, they're not paid. As I said, when it comes to a company like the NHS and they have an internal incentive, their employees have an internal motivation and drive to contribute. With a brand and with external people, naturally, there's a certain setup. I showed you before the unbranded and branded online, just little snips of how it was done. There's a certain online environment that is inviting. There are certain gamifications used, so videos and challenges and questions and polls and things, so it's not a static questionnaire that's asked where usually people are put off in the first place. But naturally, like today, you have champagne as an incentive to tweet. We also had some partners who offered some vouchers, Zalando shoe vouchers for the ladies, or we had some, our own products obviously were up for on offer. But there was a competition as well Of course, the more you participated at each stage, you had the opportunity to then be rewarded at the end. And now 1 year on, we've picked the ones that were really the best and biggest and contributed the most. And someone gets a weekend somewhere, someone gets smaller prizes. But no, they're not paid. Their motivation is contribution to future brand launch. We had naturally some very good agency partners. So Catalyx was our main partner. But we also had Cool Brands, and Cool Brands had the database of people who do word of mouth activations for kind of many brands. They're based down here in Lausanne, and they were very active because you also need a moderator for a platform like this online, and then offline in order to manage the communities and help them, remind them to also share their experiences.
Any more questions?
Did you notice that there was a particular change in kind of investment in the brand because the customers had been working to develop the branding and the product beforehand? Was there kind of a "this is my product" sense about it, or was that just kind of something that got lost in the process?
I'm not sure if I identified the question exactly, but I'll give you an example. We were going to do PR activation. PR was going to be part of our launch platform. We killed it because we did actually. I lie. We did one little test because we didn't learn the easy way, so we learned the hard way. And then I thought, yeah, okay, the crowd actually told us that wasn't going to work. We did one stunt activation down here in Geneva, and it failed miserably. So I said, okay, we're not going to spend any more money on that. That platform is killed. We also learned because some of my colleagues on some of my brands or other brands, they have activated standalone events. And they offered at the beginning, that we have all this tent set up. You could do it. It's really cheap. It's 10, 20,000 each time. And we're like, we learned from our crowd that we don't do anything standalone. We go to where they already are, and we have a presence there. So we did have financial savings from not doing that kind of thing. I haven't got it all correlated of the exact saving we have due to it, but there are many.
My question more hinged on the response of the customer. Did they feel that they were really invested in the brand and that they had an ownership of this thing?
The consumers, so the end consumer of the product?
Did they feel like they kind of, that they were involved in the process and this was something they helped to create, and did that change the way that they related to the brand?
We don't have a tracking of how the consumers feel right now about that. But however, we do know that majority of the community at the beginning, and this grew, by the way, in the word of mouth stage to 2,500 people. Majority of them joined Facebook as our fans as the first step. So they were the first people in our fan base.
A question. So looking at the way you work internally at Carlsberg, what was the biggest thing you have to change to make this happen? How has it changed the way you work now?
I'm going to disappoint you on this one because my management team, I think they had a little bit too much of a blind trust. No, but really, that was one thing that's obviously a key because there is hierarchy, evidently. So no, but our management team literally said, "What do you need? What do you want to do in order to make this brand launch work?" Of course, then you have to make it work. But what do you want to do? And this was actually a direct first presentation that we took with Guy. He wasn't in the room, but we did it together. Was to my CEO straight up. So approved.
Just to add to that, we turned up at 8:30 in the morning for the first meeting, and the first thing they made us do was test the alcoholic drink. So I'm wondering if that had something to do with it as well. Everyone was pretty relaxed.
The rest of the day went fine.
Great. Well, any more questions? A final question? There's one right at the back. And then we'll have to move on.
I actually thought he was indicating time, like way out of time.
I'm sorry you thought that. I have a question. Do you is there a specific type of person who does this word of mouth promotion on social media, and do all the same people do it for every single brand, or does the agency find new people every time?
So we will ask those questions as well, of course, because what we don't want is consumers that have a habit of always participating in these kind of studies, and then they kind of have a checklist probably in advance to make sure they can do it as fast as possible and type the least possible responses. And then it isn't so authentic anymore. So we, and the agency as well, makes sure that each person can't participate in more than, let's say, 2 of these type of things a year, and they are selected based on certain criteria. We had age range, we definitely wanted male, female, equal balance of German and French, so we had some criteria, but it was quite loose. But we did do that sense check, that we want to make sure that it's not someone that has it as a habit and almost really a hobby. They continuously do it. But that's part of an agency sense check that they always do.
Brilliant. A great question to end on. Thank you very much. Thank you to Barbara for coming down from Feldschlossen to talk.
Thank you.